Hello, how's it going everyone? So in this video, we're going to be covering the feeder strategy on just a general sense, sort of how the algorithm works on both Google and Meta, but mainly on Meta. We have the actual build outs that are in our school group, so it kind of gives you a full walkthrough, but this is going to be the picture for everyone so we better understand exactly what's going on and how the algorithms are functioning and how you can kind of retain some control over it and leverage that where other people are not. And we've gotten crazy results, meaning that you scale up 5% and you increase 30% in terms of profitability. Yeah, it gets kind of crazy. And if you're ever curious on if I'm just blowing smoke, and there's not really any evidence of it, you can always go check out our C Pro Growth channel, which is literally just on the screen. You can see C Pro Growth on our YouTube channel, and we literally showcase you exactly the case of this happening, and we do this twice a week. So anyways, let's jump right into it for you guys. So the feeder strategy in terms of the algorithm is solving a couple problems. So Google is obviously very similar to Meta, so this is going to apply to both. The algorithm itself is trying to get the easiest thing to convert based on the event data that you give it, right? Both are trying to do that, and so they want to pretty much go after the easiest thing that it can get in the first place. So both channels want conversion, so quality data is the number one solution. So a lot of times people are just looking at things from saying, okay, we have purchases or we have general leads that come in and then they're done. And they're like, okay, sweet, we're at goal. Move on to the next thing. It must be creative. It must be some other thing going on in the business, CRM, the sales team, all of that kind of stuff. And the issue with that is that they are not training the algorithm on the audience that you want to go after in the first place. And so the goal is obviously to pump in the right information. So if you want more new customers, you got to pump in new customer data. If you want more qualified leads, you got to pump in qualified lead data. Pretty straightforward in that sense, right? So that's the number one layer, I would say. Before you can even go into the strategy, that needs to be solved. That needs to be set up to where you either have edge tagging if you're e-commerce, or you're importing in qualified leads if you're lead generation. So once you have that kind of figured out, then this will apply to you and it'll be a lot more consistent. You can still get pretty far with using this strategy if you have a business that is already, well versed and working. However, the problem with this is that it is not going to be nearly as consistent if you are not pumping in the right data. So I just want to give that caveat right off the bat because I get people that will comment like, oh, we tried this didn't work. And it's like, well, you look at their conversion tracking data and it's just a total mess. So that is the number one thing to fix in the first place. The next thing that I want to cover too is that algorithms don't understand the nuances of your business, meaning that if you just want general leads or general purchasers, it's going to go after whatever it can grab. So it's going to go after return users, bots, people that can just fill out a lead form and not necessarily convert. And it's just going to sort of spin its wheels in the audience's direction. I think it's doing totally fine, like I talked about. So we have to be in more control of what we want for our business. This also applies to certain types of offerings. So if you are selling, let's say, product A a lot, and that's your main seller, but your product B hasn't really been tested in the market, and you're like, hey, we want to push this more, see if we can get any traction. We have really good margin, we have really good creative. It's very aligned with the creative that's already winning, but we just want to make sure that the audience can be tested. Those are kinds of things that the feeder strategy is very, very good for because it gives you a lot more diversity in how you reach new audiences. So like I was mentioning, we're kind of breaking this apart and sort of manipulating the algorithm. So the next thing that I want to highlight is the structure. So what are the campaigns? Everyone wants to know what's the structure, what's the build, all of that. So the specifics of the build are in the school group, but I will give you guys the general practice and the overall idea behind it because if you guys run ads, you guys probably know how to do this already. So we have the core campaign, and then there is obviously I guess you can say a green outline behind it. If you have not watched my video on the gem audience that I covered earlier, highly recommend it. But the gem audience, if you don't know, crash course, is that it's an audience that will be the top of funnel, middle of funnel, bottom of funnel. It's kind of the all-encapsulating audience that has been on your website or is in the interest or is coming from Google or is coming from YouTube or coming from Pinterest. It's sort of the mass, I guess, pool audience that shows some interest into your business. So this is going to be typically a warmer audience. However, it might not necessarily be always a very warm audience, meaning that you could still have a lot of new customers in your gem audience, I guess you can say, background. Now we're doing this all on broad too, so no audiences targeting anything like that. But this is sort of the data that we've been given from Meta and the disruptors team as to how the algorithm functions. So we have the core campaign. Let's say you pause this, you turn another campaign on, you'll get the same audience that pops up, right? So turning off ads, turning them back on does not really change anything. Turning off campaigns and turning them back on doesn't really change anything. It will still latch on to the same audience. Now, the issue with this is that, yes, it's good, and we have accounts that are just running the core campaign and it's working really well. However, the problem comes in when it's a scenario where you want to push product A or product B, or we want to see if we can maybe push different creative to get further up the funnel that maybe isn't going to show signals right away and be a lot slower to getting conversions versus more middle of funnel and bottom of funnel types of creative. So prospecting becomes less efficient when you scale in terms of finding new users. So the way that we get around this is we have the core campaign, like I just talked about, which is on broad, and then obviously filtered with good conversion data, so edge tagging or qualified leads. And then we have a secondary campaign, potentially two secondary campaigns that are feeding information to the core campaign. The core campaign's goal is to stay the remainder of the, I guess you could say, or stay the largest pool of ad spend, right? So the goal here is we need to maintain a high amount of ad spend inside of this campaign so it can still take priority during the deduplication of Meta when it comes to different ad sets to still hold that core or main audience, the gem audience. If we start to scale up the other campaigns further, that audience is now going to move to these other categories. And so what that means is that when we feed data into the core campaign, we are affecting the audience in the background of the core campaign based on the ratios of spend we have on the other campaigns. So if I have a core campaign here pushing all the products, and then I'm saying, well, I want to get more of product A and more of product B. Okay, let's show a separate campaign and push ad spend purely towards product A and product B. So then we can control the overall ratio of spend based on increasing or decreasing each one of these campaigns, which then affects how the core campaign reacts to people that see product A. Because if you think about it, more people that see product A or more people that see product B are most likely going to convert in the core campaign as long as it's a good offer. Now, there is cases obviously where product A doesn't work or product B doesn't work, but this gives you the opportunity to affect the core campaign. We are not looking at this from a ROAS perspective on product A ROAS or core campaign ROAS. We're looking at it holistically and seeing the lift of product A on the back end of the business for Shopify. This same exact concept can be applied for lead generation. So instead of having this other product B, maybe this is a lead magnet and then this is a purchase or a qualified lead. So the same thing applies. We just want to figure out the ratios between the two. So that's kind of the general strategy behind it. We also, one last side note too, is that we also want to make sure that the feeder campaign, meaning this campaign here, the ones that are further up, have less data. We're doing that on purpose. We want them to look worse, and that is literally on purpose, because if they start to look better, then there's a fear of potentially that taking over the core audience, or there is the scenario where it's warm and it's recycling people again and again and again. We want to make sure that we influence the algorithm to push the attribution towards the core campaign, not the feeder campaign, or the starving campaign, I guess you can say. So the starving campaign needs to go out and hunt for more users, right? It's hungry, it's not getting conversion data. With Andromeda is going to be a lot better at finding new users, and it's going to be way, way better at targeting. It's going to need less feedback signals. You're still getting it in the pixel, and it's going to go for what resonates most with the type of user. So that'll be like hook rate or click-through rate, and it's just trying to get engagement. And so the goal is to keep it hungry, so we'll go out and hunt for more users, whereas the core campaign houses the gem audience or the top of funnel, middle of funnel, and bottom of funnel ecosystem, right? This is kind of your does everything. So we're just affecting the whole funnel with further up the funnel, I guess you can say, actions or campaigns with creative. A quick side note too on creative is that we would only have product A creative in here, product B creative in here, but then all the creative in here. So we can have duplicate creative across these. So this would have everything. So You can use this same kind of concept for not just products, but you can do, like I said earlier, lead magnets to purchases, to offers, to bundles, things of that nature. You want to be very, 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 very careful when it comes to ICPs and customer avatars, because if you are trying to organize this based off of, oh, does this creative work towards this avatar versus this one over here, you're going to run in circles and you're going to get really confused, and it's not going to make sense to you at all. Because, like we were just talking about earlier, if you are testing an ICP instead of a product in this campaign over here, and it's affecting the core campaign, you're not going to see the results of this. How would you track the ICP? Maybe if it's like boys versus girls, you can kind of, figure it out, but it's going to be very, very difficult to actually tie metrics to it. And it's not really going to be clear as to which one is working or which one is not working, because you are trying to take away attribution from product A, or I guess you could say ICP A, or customer avatar A versus customer avatar B. So what I like to do to, instead of having that be a feeder, is just have that be in the core campaign and then testing variations and then pull that into the other categories if you need to. So the whole thing, what this comes down to is that we can't look at ROAS. We have to look at platform metrics, or sorry, top line metrics, not platform metrics, because at the end of the day, it's all attribution based. And so if I scale up campaign A or product A, I need to be able to tie that data and say, okay, we increased product A, the core campaign magically got more efficient, and we sold more of product A on the back end of our Shopify business. Obviously, that is a correlation there. So we're looking for those kinds of scenarios. We're not looking for, oh, product A has a really good ROAS and platform, but it doesn't, product B doesn't. Okay, product B is bad. It's not that simple. So we have to look at things holistically and how they kind of work together, and doing that allows us to better understand how the algorithm functions, which gives us all these case studies that we can share with you twice a week on the other channel to prove all of this in the first place. So hopefully you guys kind of, got something from this, better understanding of the algorithm. Like I was saying earlier, Google's the same way, meaning that you can have a low T ROAS and a high T ROAS campaign. It still works somewhat like a feeder, just to kind of give the, low T ROAS campaign more data to kind of play with, whereas the high T ROAS campaign works as more of like a bottom of funnel. So there's more to it than just that, but just kind of giving you a picture to think about things in a, I guess you could say, more black and white way when it comes to Meta and Google. So anyways, thanks again. Hopefully you enjoyed this video, and I will see you guys in the next one.